The collection of essays, Souls of Black Folk, is considered a seminal work of American literature as well as a seminal work in the history of sociology. Before the collected works were published in 1903, many of the chapters had appeared as separately published essays. Although we are only reading selections from the work, you are encouraged to read it cover to cover, beginning with the forethought on pages 5 to 6. Throughout, the work challenges the reader's expectations. Note first how each essay begins with a verse from a poem, followed by a couple of lines from the musical score of one of the sorrow songs, Black spirituals that capture the emotion of the Black experience in the United States. In the last essay of the collection, Du Bois describes these hymns as the siftings of centuries with music far more ancient than the words. Far from being extraneous decorations, together the poetry and music that introduce each essay provide the reader a way to frame the aesthetic and feeling of the prose that follows. As you will often see in this course, great works of literature tend to show more than they tell, and they always invite questions that can never fully be answered by the text. Nowhere is this more true than in Souls of Black Folk. W.E.B. Du Bois completed his PhD at Harvard University, where he wrote one of the first historical dissertations that employed a scientific approach to history. If today it is taken for granted that racism and inequality have structural and systemic causes, we do so because Du Bois's historical and sociological works were the first to posit that problems like economic inequality were primarily the result of complex and interrelated socio-economic phenomena, rather than the result of individual character traits. Unlike his more technical and academic works, Souls of Black Folk is designed for a lay audience, members of American public, much like yourselves. Not only was the book met with immediate critical and popular acclaim, as well as no small amount of alarm in the White South, it has had a lasting impact on several academic fields of study, including literary theory, critical race theory, philosophy, sociology, and literature. The first chapter, of Spiritual Strivings, contains 3 key ideas that are foundational for understanding the rest of the work. Double consciousness, the veil, and the colour line describe the subjective Black experience of race and the objective social and political consequences of segregation. The topic of each chapter varies, but all cohere around an important set of themes: the substance and purpose of education, economic inequality, the distance, physical, spiritual, and economic, between the Black and white experiences in the US, and the lingering and persistent effects of slavery across generations. One essay in the collection, The Coming of John, is fictional, but its themes are familiar as it explores the tragic consequences of racial alienation. Of particular importance to us in this course is Du Bois's argument about the centrality of education for obtaining the promise of full freedom, equality, and belonging. Unlike his political and intellectual rival Booker T. Washington, Du Bois believed that a liberal education rather than mere technical training was the key to full participation in the body politic. As you read this collection, ask yourself how each chapter invites a unique perspective and/or imparts new language for your understanding of race in America. Some of the history will be new for you, as we seldom learn in school very much about the Freedmen's Bureau, the economics of sharecropping, or about the cotton industry in the post-Reconstruction South. Similarly, you may not be familiar with the founding and purpose of the nation's most prestigious historical Black colleges and universities. If the world described in Souls seems at once familiar and foreign to you, know that the author himself composed the work as a journey into the veil designed to show the strange meaning of being Black in the dawning of the 20th century. To read Souls of Black Folk as part of a common curriculum in a small, predominantly white liberal arts college like ours is to invite uncomfortable conversations and to suggest that the world of the early 20th century is not so different from our own, despite a distance of more than 100 years. But reading Du Bois is not merely an exercise in history, a forced march through the racial injustices that have plagued our country since its inception. Reading Du Bois is also an invitation to wisdom, as we learn how we may turn the tangle straight, as the author says, in our quest for life above and beyond the veil.